Welcome to our 5-minute Bible study today. We're, of course, in the book of Romans. Today we begin looking at Romans chapter 16, which is the final chapter in this wonderful book. We are now in Paul's concluding words. Now, as you read chapter 16, you realize most of the chapter is a series of greetings. Paul is giving greetings or sending greetings from people he knows. Now, you recall, of course, we've said this several times, Paul had never been to the church in Rome before. He's never visited them, but he does know a number of the members there. He has met them in other places, in other locations, and they've now located in Rome, and so he wants to send some personal words of greeting. Now, we're not going to read them all, because there are an awful lot of greetings in this chapter, but I do want to point out a few because they're interesting. Paul begins the chapter by saying, I commend to you our sister Phoebe, a deacon of the church in Cenchrea. I ask you to receive her in the Lord in a way that is worthy of his people, and to give her any help that she might need from you, for she has been the benefactor of many people, including me. Now, he's commending this lady Phoebe to their care. She is a deacon in the church in Cenchrea. Now, Cenchrea is a suburb of the city of Corinth. And you recall, I've told you this before, that when Paul wrote the letter of Romans, he was at that time in the city of Corinth. So it seems that Phoebe is actually the one carrying the letter. She is the one who is delivering the letter to Rome. It seems that she probably had some business in Rome to conduct, and since she was going there, Paul sends the letter in her hand. Keep in mind, in this day, there's no such thing as a postal service. There's no post office to send your letters through. So if you're going to send a letter, it has to be by personal means. So Phoebe is the one carrying the letter, and Paul lets these Romans know she is a leader in the church here. She has been a great help in the gospel of Christ, and receive her and help her in any way that you can. Then Paul says, greet Priscilla and Aquila, my co-workers in Christ Jesus. They risked their lives for me. Not only I, but all the churches of the Gentiles are grateful to them. Now, of course, we know Priscilla and Aquila as companions of Paul. He had first met them years before in the city of Corinth on his second missionary journey. When he first arrived in Corinth, he met them and they became friends. They had come recently to Corinth from Rome. They had lived in Rome prior to that, and they had been expelled from Rome. There was a time in this period when Claudius, the emperor, had expelled all the Jews from Rome. And Priscilla and Aquila had to leave Rome, and so they relocated to Corinth. It seems they were already Christians when Paul met them, and they were also tent makers. And so they became partners in business and co-workers in the gospel of Christ. Later, when Paul does his missionary work in Ephesus, they join him there and lead in the work in Ephesus. But now at this time, they have relocated back to Rome. We don't know exactly when that occurred, but at some point they moved back to Rome. The Edict of Claudius had expired. Jews were allowed to live in Rome again. And so Priscilla and Aquila are now a part of the church in Rome. And since Paul knows them so well, he sends greetings to them. Notice he also says, greet also the church that meets at their house. Greet also the church that meets at their house. That is, at the house of Priscilla and Aquila. Now, this reminds us, of course, that in New Testament times, there were no church buildings. It would be in the 4th century before the Christian church really began to build buildings. Prior to that time, they always met in homes. It's always house churches. And so the church in Rome is really a series of home churches. There will be many churches across the city meeting in members' homes. And one of those homes in which they met was that of Priscilla and Aquila. Now, Paul goes on to talk about several others he wants to send greetings to. We won't mention them all because there are many names, but he has a lot of folks he wants to say hello to. Now, when he gets toward the end of the letter, he also sends some greetings from those who are with him to the church in Rome. So in verse 21, he says, Timothy, who is my co-worker, he sends his greetings to you, as do Lucius, Jason, and Sosipater, my fellow Jews. Now, these are some folks who were with Paul working in Corinth, fellow colleagues of his, and they want to send their greetings to the church in Rome. We especially know, of course, Timothy. Timothy was a young colleague of Paul. Paul mentored him. There are two letters in the New Testament written to Timothy. We know those well. But right now he's with Paul in Corinth, and he sends his greetings. And then notice in verse 22 it says, I, Tertius, who wrote down this letter, greet you in the Lord. Tertius was Paul's secretary. He was the scribe. You see, when Paul wrote a letter, he didn't write it himself. He dictated it. And he had a secretary write it down for him. Tertius was his secretary, his scribe. And so Tertius puts in his own greetings. He just writes in, I'm writing this letter for Paul. I'm his secretary, but I send you my greetings as well. One other thing I want you to notice about these greetings, he says, Erastus, who is the city's director of public works, and our brother Quartus, they send you their greetings as well. That's interesting because Erastus was a city official in Corinth. He had become a Christian, and now he wants to send his greetings to the church in Rome. So we see that some of the Christians in Corinth, as well as all the cities, were leaders of their community, people in government or people in civic affairs, and certainly Erastus was one of those. So Paul is wrapping up his letter. He's wanting to send greetings to a lot of folks, and he's wanting to send greetings from folks in Corinth to Rome. It's just Paul's way of wrapping the letter up and saying his goodbyes. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing that Paul does as he personally connects with these believers in the city of Rome. Hope you have a great day today. Tomorrow we'll kind of wrap up our study of the book of Romans. We have one more thing we want to talk about, and so we'll conclude our study of Romans in our next session. But until then, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you next time in our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Romans.